Brandon Staley, welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. Today, we are going to definitely overreact to a joint practice against the Rams where half the starters didn't even play anyway. But still, we have a lot to discuss today, and let's get right into it with this. We'll start with those turnovers. I thought it was 3. I thought it was 4. It ended up being 5 turnovers generated against the Rams' first-team offense. So let's run through the list real quick. We have a Nick Niemann interception. We have a Denzel Perryman interception. We have Alohi Gilman forcing a fumble that Daiyan Henley recovered. So shout out the linebacker crew for holding it down today. We had Derwin James deflecting a pass in the red zone that Asante Samuel Jr. picked off. And then we finally had Tuli Tuipulotu tipping up a ball at the line of scrimmage that Christian Fulton nabbed for an interception. So pretty productive day for a team that, or at least a defense that I didn't know what to expect, given that we feel good about the coordinator, but it's his first time being a coordinator in the NFL, and we're not really sure about the talent. We're definitely still not sure about the talent or the coordinator and all of that, but today was a really good first day. So, Alex, your thoughts hearing 5 turnovers against the Rams' first-team offense today?
It's definitely good. It comes with a set of disclaimers. One, the Rams are missing like 3 offensive linemen, so that'll hurt. 2, like I think Steven just tweeted, there is, these scrimmages tend to favor the defense a little bit more than the offense, and you could talk about that. But I had probably the lowest expectations, honestly, for Christian Fulton and that experiment and what the secondary would look like, and so far they're beating them, right? Obviously, we're not going to know until we get to game day. Like many people say in the chat, don't buy the stock until week 1 and you get to really see how they are. But it's a good step forward. And this defense, particularly under Brandon Staley, they were not opportunistic in forcing turnovers, right? Which is kind of what, Brandon Staley came in trying to advertise. And so hopefully you want this Jesse Minter scheme to be able to do that. So pretty good that they all played in sync too. I know obviously we weren't there in person to watch it, but even in the highlight on the Chargers feed where Derwin James tips that ball and like even right before, Asante knows not to contest it because Derwin will, and then, secures it with the 2, tiptoes on the sideline on, I think that was Nacua, right? So overall, I believe it was Puka Nacua. Number 17, Cup is 10. All right. But anyway, so, that was ultimately pretty good. I think it was Thomas Harper who got that tip into the hands of Niemann. That was another flash after Jesse Minter said that he's flashed quite a bit. So overall, it's not obviously a real preseason game even, but just seeing positive steps in this scrimmage in terms of forcing turnovers, I think is a really good thing for this defense that is not the most naturally talented in the NFL. So I think for this defense to win, they're going to have to force turnovers in regular season games and get that kind of in their win column in order to set up this offense, right? So overall, pretty good, first, I guess, live viewing experience, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. The defense last year wasn't particularly good at much outside of maybe rushing the passer, and that was basically just my edge rushers are really good sort of situation. This year, I don't know what they're going to be, but I think you and I and Steven, a lot of Chargers fans have felt this is not the most talented Chargers defense outside of the edge rusher group. Does that mean they're bad? No. Does that mean that they can't be coached up? No. But that's not the most talented group. You're not looking at this group and going, there's a bevy of first-round picks or hyper-athletic players or really expensive guys. Just not quite that group. So to see them doing this year, at least in one joint practice, is fantastic. I mean, they only forced 21 turnovers last year as a defensive unit. I'm not saying that they're going to have 5 per game now heading into the NFL for 17 weeks or 17 games, but 5 today against a very good offense was truly shocking to me. I expected, and I didn't even cover the defense today. I wrote about the offense. I didn't cover the defense at all before the joint practice because to me, it felt like the Chargers would be completely mismatched on defense. Now, I didn't know about the Rams offensive line, but still, you tell me, You tell anyone, ask anyone in the chat, like, okay, Rams offensive wide receiver core versus the Chargers defensive backs, who's winning?
Right.
Who's Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, etc. And not that they didn't drive the football at all, but for them to consistently force turnovers is great to see. And we're hoping that Minter brings, maybe even if it's a different style, fine, but brings the same kind of success that McDonald did with, of course, the Michigan Wolverines and then the Ravens last year. The Ravens last year were the team that led the NFL in forced turnovers with 31. So if that's where we're going with Minter's defense, that's fantastic to hear. And if they aren't the best, like down to down defense this year, that's fine. If they're not top 10, that's fine. My expectations for this defense are like, just get out of the 20s. That'd be great. As much as you can with less. And if their way of doing that is to force turnovers, I feel fantastic. And to me, this all goes back to that quote that Daiyan Henley had that you talked about, and that he gave to Fernando Ramirez, which was, let's fool the offense rather than the players playing the defense. And I think that seems to be happening right now. I mean, you don't force 5 turnovers on accident, and it really felt like there was just great communication in the back end with the linebackers, with the secondary. It was very impressive.
Yeah. And speaking of Daiyan, like from what I saw in practice, and I guess what's kind of continued into today, with him, I guess Parham and kind of Neiman, Junior Colson out, that's kind of your, 3 right now. Those are they've been playing really well. Certainly higher than kind of what my expectations were. So just to see Daiyan, potentially take that next step, certainly as a coverage player from down to down. And I just listened to Jourdan talk about it a little bit in his press conference, but, he's been really impressed with Daiyan. Take that for what it's worth. They share the same agent. But I do think there was, legit development where this guy, was a strong safety in college. Like he can stay with these tight ends and running backs. And so the Chargers with Eric Kendricks and Kenneth Murray last year, for every point that they improved in the run game a little bit, they took a big step back in the pass game. And so, Daiyan and Daiyan and Colson eventually, when he gets back, if those two can be pretty reliable in pass coverage, and you have Denzel Perriman, up there being the human hit stick that he is, right? Like that's honestly, probably the best Chargers linebacker group that they've had in a while, at least if you're talking about just traits alone.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely had a good set of linebackers in a room before, but they refused to put both Kaiser White and Drew Tranquill on the field at the same time. So hopefully, now, of course, they have Denzel Perryman as the veteran, which I totally get, but hopefully we can get a few years of Henley and Colson being that 1-2, very athletic, very smart guys. Yeah, hearing a lot of great stuff from them. Navarro Bowman has just been doing a great job, it seems like, so far. Not that he doesn't know how to play the position, but it's different when you're coaching. Seems like he's doing a great job, and the Chargers apparently have 6 former 49ers coaching on this coaching staff right now.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it was funny seeing the Harbaugh going to the thing last night for Patrick Willis's induction. And it's like, oh, wow, this guy's a Chargers coach, and this guy's a Chargers coach, and this guy's a Chargers coach. And it's like, oh, yeah, Harbaugh really is a people person, bringing back, the Niner Michigan Chargers that this team is.
And I think that really does speak to his connection with the players. The fact that guys would come back in any capacity, like 3 of them are more permanent coaches, but 3 others are just coaching interns. The fact that guys a decade later would come back and work with Harbaugh, I think really speaks to strong relationships. So like, I get it. Everyone, like the current Chargers and the coaching staff, of course, they're going to say Harbaugh's a great guy and this and that. But for guys a decade ago who maybe only played with Harbaugh for 1 or 2 years to come back and coach for him, speaks volumes.
Yeah, even a guy like Nick Hardwick, who has no connection to Harbaugh, presumably, coming back into the fold, being excited about, that possibility of joining this coaching staff is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I wrote an article earlier today. I didn't publish it yet, but the Chargers, just from former 49ers players, have almost 35,000 career snaps in that coaching room. It's an incredible setup. I'm curious how it'll pay off. How much of that we'll see, I don't know, because 3 of them might be gone at the end of the summer. But still, I really like where they're going with that. And the Ravens do have two of their coordinators are former players too, so it's really interesting. Anywho, let's get to who was not practicing really quick, and especially some maybe Joey Bosa news. So not practicing, not a surprise. Justin Herbert, Jamaree Salyer, who's been out for a few days now. McConkey, who's been out with a few days now. Quentin Johnston not practicing, which is really unfortunate because I wanted to see him take some step forward against a different defense today. Junior Colson, no surprise. And then Leon Johnson, Donald Parham, Kimani Vidal, unfortunately. And then Trey Pipkins was a bit of a surprise. So we'll talk about the offensive line in just a bit. The last bit of news that we've seen, and let me know if you've seen something more recently, where from Daniel Popper, Joey Bosa was shaken up after a rush in 11-on-11, something with his left hand or wrist. He's heading inside with trainers, and that he had been dominating practice. So as far as I know, Joey Bosa hurt something in his hand/wrist. I don't know what, but I'm going to assume the answer is working through something right now.
Well, Harbaugh's not even speaking today, so we can't even get that answer.
No. Great. Well, we're going to assume then. So that's who's not practicing. So I've seen now 2 different comments related to the same thing. Scott Child saying that the offensive line was getting bent over, but also from Forgotten Locale that Alt looked nice in practice. Now, I don't know. So full disclosure, I'm obviously at home. The practice just ended, which means I wasn't there. I was credentialed for today. Would have been fun, but I have to do this whole like real job thing that starts in a week and a half or so. So I had to deal with that. And Alex is a little bit on the East Coast now, a little further away than he was.
Couple thousand miles.
Yeah, something like that. Very difficult to make that trip. Although you did make it in one day before. Anywho, I'll let you pick. Alex, do you want to start with the offensive line getting worked or Joe Alt apparently being good?
What does the chat want me to start with? I think the Brett tweet, I guess, about Joe Alt being good, I don't know how much of that is like just future production, kind of based off the traits and what he's seeing in practice, or just, he was putting on a clinic and everyone else on the line sucked. It probably is a bit of both. Look, we all think Joe Alt's going to be pretty good. I think this is going to be a good test for him, particularly this preseason, or at least the snaps that he's going to play this preseason. Right. So that's good to see. And, I think a lot of the Chargers, Jamaree and Trey didn't practice today, correct?
Yeah.
So that is a problem for this offensive line, particularly on the interior where, now the depth is kind of tested there. And so for some people asking in the chat, Coleman was at the joint scrimmage today, which is why he was tweeting about Alt. I think he also tweeted about the mentor defense after kind of the day they had. So, I would guess someone said in the chat, I guess Greg Roman spoke today, that there was a lot of just miscommunication going on. So I know he just had a media availability. I didn't watch it. But yeah, it sounded like, they just weren't totally in sync today, which, will take time.
Yeah, it'll take time for sure. It definitely takes time when you're technically missing 2 starters, although one just swap positions. But I am curious how much of that was on the new center, and of course, how much of that was on the new quarterback, right? So we have Bradley Bozeman, the veteran guy, not playing center. So the offensive line was Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, then Brendan Hymus, then Bradley Bozeman at right guard, and then Joe Alt. Maybe there's some mixing and matching, but that seems to be the starting group. So you don't have Justin Herbert out there to do whatever he does, right, with the protection calls and whatever he's going to do, how much he's in charge now. And then, of course, Brendan Hymus, the backup center, was starting today. And, of course, the protection. If communication was the issue, I get it. That's also very concerning. But if communication is the issue, I'm hoping that's ameliorated by, like, Justin Herbert starting and Bradley Bozeman being the center. Right. And hopefully they can work through some stuff from there. So Hymus, good experience, I guess, to have some difficulties. I am curious, though, because I'm only going off of Sholoman's message here in the chat, but I'm curious if Roman, and you can let me know, Sholoman, in the comments, did he specify that it was Alt that had the miscommunication, or was it just like everybody had miscommunication and he mentioned everyone? Like, I'm curious how much of it was on Alt, and then, of course, which side of the offensive line. Again, the bummers of not being there is we're just going off what is reported. And right now, everyone is typing their reports, which means in a few hours we'll get some clarification.
Right. What else was I going to say? Yeah, I think it not being Herbert today, and this is basically the third practice, I guess, that Herbert hasn't been there. Yeah, second. So, I mean, that's going to do kind of a number in your protection. And then, Stick isn't comfortable, I think, probably with this, grouping of the offensive line yet. And then, the less that is said is better about the other two quarterbacks and how they respond to pressure, particularly Max Duggan. But so, I think that it's just going to kind of come with time, the more reps that these guys get. And, right now they just haven't had a lot of reps with that first team offensive line.
Right. So just really quickly, the quote from ESPN's Chris Rim, who's been on the channel, the Rams defensive line was getting pressure on every drop back so far. Technically, that doesn't mean that he's specifying first team, but I'm assuming that's kind of what he's getting at there. Not great. And I'm curious how much of that pressure was early pressure, like an instant win, or was it holding onto the ball for too long? One of the reasons I wanted to see Easton Stick perform well today is because last year his pressure to sack rate and holding onto the ball for too long was 10th worst in the NFL, I believe, or something worse than that, among 45 different starters last year who had like 150 dropbacks. So I'm curious how much of that was a perceived pressure, but it was just Stick holding onto the ball for too long, or was Zion Johnson just beaten repeatedly by Braden Fisk and we need to hit the panic button? I don't know. These guys will report on this. Not great to hear initially, but one starter out of place, one starter not practicing. So I'm not super worried just yet.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, and trying to distinguish like how much is to blame between the quarterback versus the offensive line, Popper did have a pretty in-depth report the other day, I guess, of the first practice that they had without Justin Herbert, and said all the quarterbacks were pretty rough when it came to that stuff. So, I don't know of anything that happened today offensively that was necessarily surprising. They're going to be hurt without Justin Herbert, right? Like that's just how it works kind of at the end of the day. But, I think the offensive line stuff will just kind of come with time and reps that they have with Stick over this next week. And then, going forward, and then just continuing the communication once the guys get back.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. LDE Bruins asking about Herbert. Was he standing around for the whole scrimmage or just during the warmups? Mustn't be too serious. He's at least in a boot. There's a picture of him in a boot. He was on the field. It's not like he was hiding or doing rehab or something. He was just on the field in a boot, as expected, talking to Harbaugh, talking to the other coaches and players and whatnot. So I don't want to say that's not serious, but it's at least him not on full crutches or not even being out there. So it just seems to be, a precautionary thing. Alex, has your thoughts changed on the injury at all? Or are you still kind of wait and see, or?
Wait and see still at this point. I mean, again, if they really think he'll be back in 2 weeks, then like this isn't too bad. But again, it's 2 weeks minimum in a boot, and then they'll start this return to play protocol. So, I kind of have to see, I guess, how that goes. But overall, I mean, I'm just kind of still in the same place. But he was just pretty much walking around there today, which you could do with a boot. He could probably do it without a boot, and he would have been okay just walking. The issue is obviously running and getting into full speed on what looks to be right now like a plantar fascia tear. So, I'm not in the Chargers medical room to diagnose how large the tear is, how small the tear is, and they're certainly not going to give us those details. So, we just kind of have to take the updates as they come, and hopefully he's back sooner out of that boot than later.
Yeah, I definitely hope so, especially if the quarterbacks have been looking rough, which is not a surprise. It's never been a surprise that the backup quarterbacks for the Chargers have looked not so great. It's been a minute since the Chargers had a really great.
Like the backup quarterbacks for every team look bad. Like, that's kind of why.
Believe it or not, yes.
They quote Anthony Lynn, backup for a reason.
Backup for a reason. So yeah, anyway, let me just go back over the injury report, the not practice report, just to see if you feel there's any reason to panic with any of these names that have been out for a good long while now. So obviously Herbert, but the main ones that have been out for a bit: Jamaree, who went down, McConkey, who's been out for a bit and consistently kind of dealing with something, Donald Parham, and then Kimani Vidal. Any of those guys, any of one of those names in particular stand out to you, Alex?
Well, McConkey is a little bit interesting because I think it was Friday's practice, because he missed Thursdays, then came back for Friday, and then left Friday also. So I think he re-aggravated whatever, injury or / working through something that he had before. So that one is the one to watch, just particularly because, I mean, when we were watching McConkey, I know me and Steven, particularly on Friday and Saturday, those practices, like he was just on fire, man. And it's very unfortunate that I wrote a pro McConkey article and then he immediately got hurt afterwards, which was great. But he was really on fire. Led the team in catches, led the team in touchdowns pretty much. Like, he was just in sync with Herbert, and he had the chance for even more production on balls that just Herbert overthrew where they weren't in sync on a certain play. So, not that he needs the reps necessarily, because we know that this guy is, a bona fide route runner. But, you'd like to see him back certainly sooner rather than later. And then, Kimani Vidal being injured again, we don't know with what, but I would have liked to just have seen more of him out there, because it really seemed like, again, he was doing pretty good earlier in the week in practice. Certainly on that, I remember that Tuesday practice, there were a couple highlights of him when I flew back. So, you want to see him be able to have this competition with presumably Spiller for that last spot now that Jarrett Patterson, I don't know if Jarrett Patterson has clinched RB3, certainly, but he's in the driver's seat for that. So, I mean, if they're going to keep 4 running backs, then it's one spot between Spiller and Vidal. So,
yeah. We have a preseason game very soon that hopefully will sort through some of this. I hope that Kimani Vidal can play, and Spiller and Patterson, all these guys can actually play and go, jockey for the 3rd spot or win a roster spot, whatever it is. We have Steven in here. Greetings from Newport Beach. Thanks to Tyler and Alex for holding it down today. Welcome to Southern Orange County. It's very nice, and it's probably not as hot as Fresno. So I hope all there's good there, Steven. You can always just drive to Irvine, and we could always live stream together. Steven will be at practice, I believe, on Tuesday. So he'll do, I think, another notebook. He had a really, really good notebook from when he was on the field that got, pretty solid views for us. So really in-depth. People really responded to it. So definitely check that one out. As Eddie points out, who cares who's out now? We need everyone 100% healthy by September 8th. It's August 4th today. True. I guess you don't really care with the regular season so far away. But when you're, a new team, new coaches, new staff, new players, you want to have that chemistry built over the course of a month, if not more.
We as Chargers fans are built that, like, when that tweet notification comes up from Daniel Popper or Chris Rim or anybody in the national media, that one, it might be August 4th, but we're certainly getting closer. And we've been snake bitten by injuries in the, period where football is supposed to not matter before. So
yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, knock on wood, have seen several of those injuries and medical emergencies that have completely, or a random bone in your foot is suddenly needs to be taken care of. I mean, we've gone through it all, man. All right. We're not going to spend a whole lot more time on this because it's one practice. We'll wait for the really good reports from Popper and Chris Rim and all these guys to come out. Eric Smith does a really good job recapping practice as it was going today. We have a really, really good, solid group of writers, I feel like, where it was kind of, I wasn't so sure before. So those guys, check them out for sure. We're basically doing this entire episode off of their coverage. So thank them so much for all of that. Alex, any final thoughts before we head out?
Oh, we're already on final thoughts. Wow.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not wasting time. I'm not going to spend another 30 minutes here, man. We got to go.
No, I thought, encouraging to hear that the defense was playing pretty well. Hope that obviously Bosa is okay, with the hand wrist thing that popped up at the end of practice. But, from all accounts, the defensive line was dominating. Again, how much of that is the Chargers edge room versus how much of that is the Rams offensive line right now? We don't know. But ultimately, good steps forward to see even just instinctive stuff like Thule knowing to tip a ball in the air. And then Derwin had a funny quote where he talked about the ball in the air being like tipped like a volleyball from the defensive line. So, good to see that they're getting the pressure and, getting hands up certainly on some of these plays. So, I don't know how much of the starters a la Bosa Mac we'll see in that preseason game. I think they're scheduled to practice again with the Rams on the 14th. I don't know if that's a scrimmage or a practice, though, but probably very much in similar the vein of what we have today. So we'll see. If we get a bit more of a even matchup there, I guess defensively, or the Chargers keep dominating practice, which would be nice. Little concerned with the offense right now, just that we're in this phase where Herbert's obviously not getting reps with these guys. Not that he necessarily needs them, but again, as we saw with the offensive line today, like Herbert is so crucial to a lot of their communications, and they specifically have practiced, Bozeman handing off the ball to Herbert, handing off the ball to a running back, or just what the communication at the line is. So I think that's why there was some of that confusion today. So hopefully Herbert obviously back soon, but also hopefully in this period where he is gone, Stick and the rest of the quarterbacks in that offensive line start to just gel a little bit more.
Yeah, great point. Ending with the offense there, I wish we had heard more, and I think not hearing more is concerning because you mostly are trying to tweet the good stuff, and we didn't hear a thing about the running backs and the rushing offense. I don't think we heard anything about DJ Chark or Josh Palmer. We didn't hear anything about the tight ends. So that was definitely concerning. All we heard was that Joe Alt seemed to have been good. The rest of the offensive line seems to have struggled. And we heard nothing else about the rushing attack, the tight ends, the deep game, play action game. So not that it's bad, but we didn't hear it. We didn't see it. Whereas before we've been seeing DJ Chark win down the field on a vertical route, or Josh Palmer making a sideline catch, and we didn't even get a Quentin Johnston drop today. So that's going to do it for us today. Steven's going to go and talk about the practice on Tuesday, I believe. I think the next time we'll go live is actually Saturday then, which will be the morning of the game against the Seahawks. Little final pre-show, little preview show. Then we'll go live after that game. So I think the next time we'll see you guys live is on Saturday. Could be wrong. Steven, let me know. You're the guy in charge. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Take care. And as always, bolt up.